from me. So welcome everyone. For those who are new and joining us for the first time today, I'm Emma Chung and I do the communications and business development for Propel. So welcome everyone. So this is our Honest Stories event and we'll be sharing some inspirational stories from our lovely ladies, Naila and Mimi. Before kicking off into a networking session. So we, like I said at the beginning, even though we're in lockdown, we do like to meet some new people, see some new faces. So, that's why we do encourage you to have your cameras on and unmute and say hi where you can. We are big on social. We do love seeing what you do and, sharing if you enjoy our events and everything. So do hook us up on Instagram. We're on at Propel Network using the hashtag Propel Network and Changing Women's Lives. If you tag us, we will make sure to reshare. We do love to make this quite a friendly community where we can share not just things, we're not just sharing things about property, but also more wellness bits and pieces. So do think of us as you're going about your day to day. That's what we'd like. So I'll just hand over to Aisha to do a quick introduction.
So hi everybody. As I said earlier, lovely to see so many new faces, and welcome back to a lot of our regulars as well. It's lovely to have you all here, and we have a lady all the way from Qatar as well. So nice to see that we're going international. So today's Honest Stories is about, or the title is Compounding, the Eighth Wonder of the World. Now, I won't go into too much detail about what's in store, as I won't sort of give away all of the goodies. But I thought I'd share with you a sort of a little bit of an interesting story and a sort of initial, I guess, interesting fact about me. So for some of you who know me, I was actually a physicist originally. So I studied physics at university and was always a little bit of a geek, to be honest. So much so that at my wedding, I actually named each of the dinner tables after a famous physicist. So it was quite funny when all the guests were trying to, find their dinner tables, sort of looking at the board and trying to pronounce some of the names. But one of my favorite physicists was always Einstein. And, the main, I guess, sort of theme of today's Honest Story actually comes from a quote from Einstein. And what we're going to see today is that investing is incredibly powerful, but there are some key elements that are really important, interest being one of them, but particularly what happens when you have interest on interest on interest, i.e. compounding interest. And for me, one of the sort of fundamental things is it doesn't necessarily matter how much money you have. What's really important is investing over a long period of time, but consistently investing. And that's when you can truly reap the benefits of compound interest. And I think we'll see some of that come out tonight when we hear Naila's and Mimi's stories. So without further ado, I will hand over to our first speaker, who is absolutely incredible. I've seen this presentation and I've actually been through her background, but I will let her introduce herself. You're also real sweet this evening. So I will hand over now to Naila Din.
Thank you very much, Aisha. I'm going to share my screen. There's a strange whizzing sound. Can anybody else?
Yeah, I can as well. I think someone, if they've got their mics unmuted, if you could just mute, that would be great. Okay.
Perfect, thank you.
Cool, we've got it. Great.
Right, so thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to share my story. I hope am I able to? Yeah. So as Aisha mentioned, this is an opportunity just to share what compounding can do. And what I want to do is to share my story, and hopefully my intention is that it would inspire you to take action and just take the leap and do something about the ideas that you've been having about investing with property or in any of the other investments that you're thinking of. So taking the action. And as Einstein said, compounding is like the eighth wonder of the world. It's amazing once you start to understand its power. So this month, I wanted to share, I finished my MBA, and there's still that sound there. I don't know if you can hear it. No? Oh, you got
Yeah,
it.
no, it's appeared a little bit. I don't know if Millie, if you could just check that everyone's been muted.
Yep, of course.
Yeah,
Yep.
that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry,
So,
and just a reminder to everyone that this is being recorded as well. Cool.
thank you very much.
That's
So
okay.
as I mentioned, this month I was very pleased. I finished my MBA and did really well. And through the MBA, I made my intention to focus on how women can build property portfolios through the power of the pension wrapper. So with my research, I interviewed some of the top property experts that I was able to connect with, and which you've had Bronwyn on this webinar before. And she was one of the people that I was able to interview. I also surveyed over 100 women about how they structure their property portfolios and what role pensions played in their property portfolio. So through that research, I was able to learn to go and find the right accountant and incorporate my own property business. And I'm able to at the moment get it more sort of structured correctly to be more tax efficient and plan for my for the future of what I want to actually do with my business. So what I'm going to share with you today is how that 16,000 which I saved to buy my first house turned into the asset value that I'm now incorporating. So I was born in Bradford in 1972, and my father came to the UK when he was 14 years old from Tanzania. The issues around Indian Africans with the Idi Amin and all of that story, he arrived in the UK at 14 years old. He didn't go to school, he self-educated himself. And as he got older, he wanted to get married. Now, it was very cultural in my parents' family that the parents arranged the marriage. They chose who they would marry, and he wanted to marry a woman from Pakistan. And they actually never met each other until after they'd taken the vows. So they're still together. It's a functional marriage, but it was the way that it worked for my parents. Now, my mother was very religious, and as I was born, there was a conflict, let's say, on how we were at home with a Muslim family and how we were at school. I am the first generation of the people that came to the UK from immigration, and so there was a lot of confusion. They didn't know how to communicate with us and how the culture was working in Britain. My dad taught himself to be a builder, and I loved watching him sort of renovate our first home. He built the dormitory. He self-taught himself to be a builder. And my grandfather made the windows, and I used to watch my grandfather making the windows, and he shared stories that he was taught by a blind carpenter in Africa, which was really interesting stories of how they learned their trades. However, at 18, what happened was the confusion, the conflict. I found myself expecting at 18, but wasn't married according to how my parents wanted me to. So things became very, very difficult, and they arranged for me to move away from the home to a town. And I arrived there in Harrogate, and the plan was that I would have my son, but had my baby, and then go back to Bradford and be married off. So they'd already arranged somebody to marry me, because that's what the only thing was for a woman. But because he was a boy, my parents didn't want to give him away, so they made the decision that they wanted to keep him. So I was very grateful for that, because because of the plan to adopt him, I wasn't able to see my son straight away. So I was able to finally see him. And then I was moved around many different homes in Harrogate, and then moved on to different towns, before I finally made the decision that I actually wanted to study again. carry on and finish my studies. So I was able to transfer from Bradford to York, and at this point get a place to actually complete my degree. I did really well. I'd won scholarships. I won international awards. This is Glenn Hoddle. I had no idea who he was when he was giving me the award, because I didn't know anything about football, just lots of cameras around us. It was really fulfilling and exciting. So it was just me and my son, but at the same time, I had this belief that I wanted to give him a perfect family. I wanted to give him a father figure, and I tried to make the relationship with his father work. Fortunately, it didn't work, and my mother was talking to me and she said, one thing that nobody can ever take away from you is your education. They can take anything else, but not your education. And she said to me, well, why don't you try Cambridge? And I thought, yeah, as if Cambridge is going to accept me. But I applied, and you don't know what you can make happen until you actually give it a go. So in Cambridge accepted me, and at 22, I went to Cambridge. And this is where my property journey started. So I arrived in Cambridge with my son and expecting my second child. And I did bring my cats with me as well. So the only focus at this point for me was that I had moved so many homes. I just wanted to get my put a secure roof over my children's heads so nobody could get us to move again. Because when the landlord would come, I was always very frightened that he was going to tell me I had to move again because I'd moved so many homes. At this point, I was 23 years old, and I learned at college that if I wanted to get a mortgage, I had to have a deposit and I had to work for 6 months. So that was my only goal with my degree, to actually finish it and get my first job and save and have a deposit. So I had to raise money for a deposit, and I actually did everything I possibly could. So I had a lodger. I hosted foreign students. I would wake up at 4 o'clock and go and polish the floor at Tesco. I collected fruit. I went to the fruit farms, and I did graphic design work, anything I could do. And over the period of 4 years, I did raise £16,000. And what I did with that was I also learned how to use utilities at home really efficiently. I could make my £5 electricity card stretch for a whole week. So I didn't use the kettle to boil water. I didn't use the washing machine. I didn't use the Hoover. I did everything manually, and even didn't buy disposable nappies. I bought the Terry's. So I did everything because I was so determined to make this happen. Now, at the same time, I used to look at the street opposite and find houses going up for sale, and would ring up to find out how much are these houses going for, how much deposit do I need to actually raise. And 1 month it'd be 30,000. I'm thinking, how the hell am I going to buy a house for 30,000? Because in Bradford a house was 7,000, Cambridge it was 30,000, and it was just, I just thought, how am I going to do it? But I just kept saving, kept thinking a way will come. And I found that every couple of months when I rang up to find out what the prices were, they were going up little by little. And at the same time, I used to look at this house at the bottom of my street. I used to sit in the window when my children were asleep and imagine what it would be like, because I loved the fact that it had an extension. It was completely different from every other house. And I used to imagine what it would be like to be in that porch looking at the house that I was renting in. I didn't know at the time, but that's called manifestation. I used to do it every single night because it made me feel good to think, imagine what the house would be like, and I bet it's really beautiful inside. About 4 years later, the house came up for sale, and instantly I went down and said to the couple that lived there that I wanted to buy the house. They luckily were parents of a boy who was a friend of my son, and they agreed to sell me the house £4,000 less than what they had on for me on the market, which meant I could actually buy that house. So I'd manifested my first house. I went and took that photograph just 2 days ago. It's still the red door that I painted all those years ago. It looks knackered, but it's still that red door. So what I wanted to show also was when I was living there, I noticed in a couple that within sort of 6 months, the house prices were going up. So I didn't know anything about property, but I was just really curious, how are people able to buy houses that are now 80,000 when they used to be like 60? I thought that was really, it had jumped quite a lot in a few years. So I was becoming aware that house prices were increasing. I didn't actually know why that was. In that 5 years also, my son's father was released. I did share with Emma a little bit more about that story, but what happened was I was put into police protection and victim support, and my parents were very worried about me and insisted that I just leave the house and go and live with them. Now, I didn't want to sell the house. I just knew in my heart that if I needed to keep it, but there was a lot of pressure from my family to actually sell it. But then I put the house with a rental agency, and the house rented for £900. My mortgage was 100. The tenants were paying all the bills, and I couldn't believe that I was getting all this money and I hadn't done anything for it. So, but unfortunately, I did have to sell it 5 years later. And I had a check in my hand for £100,000 5 years later from investing my 16,000, and it had my name on it. I was so excited because I'd never held that much money in my hand before. So what the learning here is, the rental is a great opportunity for passive income, but don't rely on other people's opinions. A network like Propel, if you make yourself connected to women like this, you can discuss things on how to actually utilize these opportunities. So that £16,000 had return on investment of 105% growth over each year that it was in that property. So I used £25,000 of that money to purchase a house just outside Cambridge, and I invested the rest of the 75,000 in stocks and bonds that the financial people told me that would be wise for me to do. So I intended to stay in this house, and then sell it, because I felt if I keep stay in it, make it really pretty, and then sell it, it's going to get me more money very quickly. Unfortunately, circumstances meant that 3 months later I had to sell it. However, it still grew in its value, and that £25,000 then, which was the deposit, had grown by an extra 11, making it £36,000. But there was lessons to learn in that flipping as well. Now, flipping is an excellent way that you can generate cash very quickly with a property portfolio. But at the same time, don't give up your career for a relationship, because you think that, you want this perfect life for your children. Sometimes I learned later on that you're enough. But I also put the burqa on, so the full burqa, which was a huge thing for me, and I did wear that for 9 years. So I truly know what that was like for me, but it was forced upon me, so it wasn't a personal choice. So I continued with the flipping strategy. My husband then, who I married, only lasted 3 months. Well, it fell apart when I got here. He wanted me to buy a property in Luton, which I did, and it was the one that he liked. So I bought a house for 140. I used the deposit from the last property, and in 6 months I had to sell it. Again, it grew because there was something going on with property at the time, very similar to what's about to happen now, what we're seeing now with property. The deposit again increased by another 15k, which then made it 50,000. There were lessons to learn. I had another relationship, another man, same dysfunctional relationship, but I moved out very quickly from this. My children did suffer as well because of the fact that they were not in the schools that I wanted them to be, because they were in very good schools in Cambridge. But then I think two lessons here is that keep assets in your own name, even if you're married, and never give up what you love for other people. Because I loved Cambridge, I loved my cat, and I was willing to put all those things to one side to try and make this perfect relationship happen, but it wasn't meant to be. So I tried to come back into Cambridge, but my deposit wasn't enough. So I had to think, well, what am I going to do? So I bought, this was a year when I actually bought 2 properties in 1 year. I had to move out to Peterborough because the houses in Cambridge were just too expensive. And at this point, what I learned was I sold this property a year later. I did only use half the deposit here because I used the other half for a property that I bought actually back in Cambridge. I did find one. And the lessons here was I joint ventured with my brother because he was working. I didn't have a job because I'd quit my job. And I wanted him to buy the property in Cambridge together so that I could actually get back into Cambridge. So make sure that anybody you do a joint venture with, that you share your values and you're very clear about your expectations. And think hard before you work with family. It's family, but sometimes values can be very different. So the joint venture did bring me back into Cambridge, which was great. And I got my independence back. My career grew and money started flowing in, and I was able to take my children on absolutely amazing holidays they'd never experienced before. So on the weekend, what my daughter and I would do, we would go to show houses. She loved going to show houses on a weekend, and we'd go together to actually see how we wanted to decorate this house. And we came across a house that she wouldn't back off on me. She says, find a way to buy it, find a way to buy it. It was huge. It was a 6-bedroom house. And I thought, there's no way I can buy this. I happened to be sharing this story with my neighbor, and she says, well, you can release equity from this property and use that as a deposit for that house. I'd never heard of anything like that before. And I thought, okay, so how do you do that? So she explained how I did that. She showed me that I could actually turn this property into a 4-bed HMO. And whilst I was living in the house, all I did was pay the mortgage down, and I'd reduced it down to 48K. So my 36,000 was then added to the 127 equity that I released from this property. And the rental is amazing because the net is really good after I've paid all my bills. So what the learning here is, money is often right under your nose. You won't know, because I had no idea I was sitting on this much money. And don't spend time just paying off your mortgage. If you want to create a property business, learn to leverage. That's what this was. It was learning to leverage the funds. So my passion for property grew when I actually was able to buy this house. And it's a large 6-bedroom house, and the purchase price was 398. The rental income, my mortgage allows me to rent out 2 of the rooms, and the rental income in Cambridge is very, very high, and especially if they're en suites. So the return on investment is brilliant. And having said that, I hadn't dealt with my own personal situation, and I experienced my career in my job grew. I became a director of arts, but the pressure, the politics, all of those, and the things I hadn't dealt with in my personal life. My kids were growing, and I experienced something that the doctor called a mini stroke. I refused to go into take pills or any of that kind of stuff. And I focused on getting my health back to better, which meant even though I went back part-time, I decided I would resign and focus on me and my kids. So whilst I'm incorporating now, the property value of the house is now 840. The potential is now, my aim is to turn it into an 8-bedroom HMO, which will generate over 5K. So maximize the earning potential of what you have right now, what assets you have, and don't be afraid to buy big, because I kept saying there's no way I can get this property. And my daughter says, find a way, find a way. She had a book, she had pictures of it. She was just looking at it all the time. So I had to find a way. So there are other opportunities. So if we have children, my son went to university, and when I went into university, I saw that his student accommodation would cost £3,000 for a term. I thought that would be a really waste of money. And on the way driving back, I saw these flats, and they said that you could buy a flat for £29,000 plus, we went in and there was 2 flats left. One was two ensuite, 1 extra bathroom, 2-bed, very large flat. And I couldn't believe nobody had bought it. So I, at that point, had no idea how I was going to do this. So I put down £500 deposit and I had no idea how I was going to buy it. I just thought it was a fantastic deal. So I negotiated with them the price and was able to go from 140 down to 102. I was in the mosque when they agreed that. So, so what's brilliant about that is that at the time when I agreed to buy it, I spoke to many mortgage advisors. They all said there was no way I could buy that property. So I decided I had to find a way. It was too good to just leave it. So I started going to banks on the high street. I went to the Halifax and they said to me, if my son is in there, I can have a second residential mortgage. So my learning here was that we can actually have 2 residential mortgages. So he was living there and I was able to have that property. He helped keep them other 2 rooms rented. We turned it into a 3-bed flat. And right now there is no cash in that property because I was able to take it back out and it still generates a good return and it's never been void. So this was my first taste of renovation. So I purchased a property here in Milton Keynes. I did research about what areas I wanted to invest in. And what should have taken 3 months took 3 years because I decided I will go into partnership with my father. And that was very interesting because we had different values. He wanted to do things quick. I wanted things to be of high quality. So still, I didn't learn from my past lessons about working with family. So making sure that you're very clear about what you have, your values about what you want to create. So it did take a long time, but it's still a very good asset. So my father came in and we were lucky because we could buy this with cash, but I remortgaged this property. And now my last property that I'm at now is this property, which my son worked with me on getting a 3-bedroom house approved on the land on the side. So we have approval for a 3-bedroom house. And once the incorporation's completed, I want to move towards property development. That's my passion. And what I want to share with you here is a lesson is trust your gut instinct. Everyone, my family was saying this is not worth the price, but number 1, it's in Cambridge. Number 2, it's got the approval. And if you do the maths, that 410 is potential 740 value of investment. So what has property actually given me? It's given me the freedom to have fun. And since I grew my property, I've taken my children on so many, we're globe trotting. My confidence as property has given me greater confidence because when I did this trip, my friend was getting married in India and I had a conference in Vegas. So I booked the hotel the flight to India and the hotel in Vegas. And I had to make it work. And I had 1 month to make that all connect. So in India, we were catching flights like people catch buses. We did Goa, Delhi, Agra. We did so many things there. It was just can't keep track. So from India, we went to Hollywood. We explored Hollywood, then to Vegas, and then back to Britain. And it was absolutely a great experience. I was also able to give them the experience of hiring a plane and seeing Dubai and all the Palm Islands. So they did enjoy themselves. We went to Malaysia to my friend's wedding. I didn't have any worries about anything because the property investing had given me that foundation. I was able to heal myself as well. And we had a great time there. We had a fantastic time at my friend's wedding. There was 32 British people, went to an Indian wedding in India. We had an absolutely a ball. I do lots of fun activities with my daughter. We did the Tough Mudder. At the end, we both were electrocuted, which was a great experience. I do sports challenges. I've climbed Kilimanjaro, and the 2 flags there were the dreams of the kids in a primary school. and the dreams of the people, friends and people, and I tied them at the top of the Kilimanjaro, because I don't know if I'd have done it for myself, but you do it for other people. I've taken my parents on holidays as well. We've been to Rome. I've paid to take them to Rome, taken to Barcelona. The only time it ever rained was when I took my parents. So it was really weird. We had a really good time as a family together. Also, the money from the property has meant that I have invested in my children's personal development and in my own. We attended Tony Robbins, and my daughter managed to be with him twice, and I don't know how she did that. So, and property investing has also shown me what my mission is. I talk in schools. I have gone with my daughter. This was at the Peter Jones Academy, and she goes with me, and we want to inspire young people to follow their passion. Yes, we have our parents, our cultures are handed down generation after generation, but we're not meant to be the same as our parents. We're meant to be unique and different. And that's what I wanted to give for my kids, so that they don't become a duplicate of me. They find who they want to be. And that company is the Links Hub. We've had speakers go in, reputable speakers, who one of them, which was a coach of JLS and Tini Temper, they've gone in and spoken at these events. I also saw on Netflix, you can watch this program about Shanti Bhavan School, and what this entrepreneur has done when you pay for 1,500 to transform a child's life. And he takes the children from a very poor family, but by educating them, he raises the awareness of 100 people in that community. So I'm also in contact with a head teacher in Africa, in Kenya, where the children who with special needs can't have an education because they can't be in the school. So one of the things for 2 years, I worked in a special education school, and I've made a lot of contacts. And what I want to do is use the property investing as a foundation where I can take resources to locations like this. Also, I want to help my children to make sure that my grandchildren I can support their education, especially the first 7 years, because it's the most important time in their development. And I also have 7 cats, which I take for walks. And I'm well known in the street for my 7 cats, but I love them, and they came to me. The universe wouldn't turn them away, so how can I? So I have them. So where I am today, I was sharing with Emma, I'm really honored that I've had the chance to make this presentation, because sometimes you don't know what you've gone through until you get the opportunity to put it together. And you think, okay, now I know why I am where I am and why I have had this experiences that I've had. So you just trust that the dots will all connect. And I think I've only started my journey now. So that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you.
That was incredibly moving. Your story is unbelievably inspiring. And I think that it just serves to show everybody that who's on today that life will throw all of us lemons in one shape or other. It's about how you use what you have, how you keep pushing forward. As one comment that you made that I particularly like, you said that the money is a lot closer than you think. Yeah. That's something that I tell people often, because there are many women who feel that they don't have enough money or they can't find the capital to get going. I genuinely feel that it is closer than you think, and it's about how can I access it. And that's what this network is about, or one of the things that this network is about. It's about learning from each other. It's about encouraging and inspiring each other as well. I was actually going to there's a phrase that I heard recently. So the traditional one is, when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. I heard one recently, which was, when life gives you lemon, you can also add vodka. So that kind of just shows you that it's, whatever life throws at you, you take it, you do what works for you, but you have to try and find something positive to come out of it. And something else that I found particularly insightful in what you said is, when I look back at my own life, there were points where, I've struggled as well, and really difficult things have happened. And it's not until you get further on in the future that you look back and realize that had that thing not happened to me, I actually wouldn't have been where I am now. And there were lots of lessons learned along the way, but at the time it felt like the end of the world, and you're kind of thinking, why is this happening to me? But some key things from my own journey is you've got to be resilient. You have to keep pushing forward. You know, as you said, you have to believe in yourself. You know, you also said, don't let other people sort of distract you, or don't listen to others. I would say don't listen to others if they are not a positive influence on your life. If they are not adding value to you in some way, then you potentially need to distance yourself, because you need people around you who are going to lift you up, who are going to support you on that journey that you're going forward. You know, life is difficult, so you don't need others sort of holding you back and keeping you down. And I think just to sort of summarize again, what I loved about all of your property investments is that the reason, or one of the reasons is, you were able to make profit each time because property prices kept going up. The second thing was that, you know, you started to use leverage as well. I've always said that I don't think property works without leverage. And I think it, you know, it was just, again, testament to the natural rising of, you know, in this case, property prices, but it's about, you kept on investing. And that's the theme of, you know, this Honest Stories. It's about when you continually invest over time and you're continually getting that return, that compounding return, that's what makes the difference.
Yeah, thank you.
So thank you very much, Naila. Does anybody have any questions? Emma, do you want to go through the questions?
Yes. So we have a question from Anita. She says, inspiring story. How do you manage a large property portfolio? Do you use property managers?
No, I actually don't use property portfolios. Now, I've built a really good relationship with every single one of my tenants. And I had pizza with them just 2-3 days ago because they wanted to discuss about house rules because they weren't cleaning properly. So I ordered the pizza, I paid for it. We couldn't go out. So I like to build relationships. I think that's really important. So we were enjoying pizza and I asked them, you know, we made a list. What are the tasks that we need to do? Who enjoys hoovering? Who enjoys dusting? So we made so I get involved. Every Christmas I take him out to dinner. And what happens is by me having this relationship with them, I have WhatsApp group for each house. So I know what's going on for each person. And if they want anything, they can ask me at any point. So yes, the furthest I have to drive is Milton Keynes, and I had to do that quite a few times last week. But they've become my friends. They stay for a long time. I've had my tenants who stay for like 4 years, 5 years, and it is all about, they're by me. That's what they've said. They said, because you come and see us. So it's the relationship for definite.
Yeah, no,
not many people do that, but I've got the time.
Yeah, well, it's very personal.
Yeah.
That's so lovely. I guess related question from Farhat, have you built a network in order to maintain the maintenance on your property? So obviously you've got the relationship with the people managing, but in terms of maintaining.
I'm definitely now maintaining it. So when I was abroad on those holidays, one time the boiler broke. I was able to talk to the tenant and take her through the procedure, and we were able to work out how to get it all sorted. And I have got teams of people I can contact now, and I'm still building it. I need to build more in Milton Keynes, but that's something I'm building as I go along.
Yeah. And are you building it through more experience or?
Experience meeting people. I mean, I've had to fix a lot of things myself. I've painted rooms. I've even unblocked drains. I've, done plumbing things with one of the house tenants together. So I had to get involved because calling out a plumber was 120 quid. And I said, you blocked this, so let's watch YouTube and let's do it together ourselves. So we watched YouTube, we did it together ourselves. It took us an hour and we laughed so much about how easy it was. And I said, you saved me 120 quid. So
that really speaks to my heart. I've been doing some renovation myself, so I love the power of YouTube.
I think I'm a daughter of a builder. We have to, he had me doing everything. So
yeah, no, that's really brilliant. So women, if you wanna save money, that's one way of doing it. Do it yourself. So Aisha actually had a question earlier. How did you decide which areas to invest in? Because obviously you are in quite
So
a
I
few different areas
stayed
now.
mainly in Cambridge at first, and then once I did invest in a property mentor, he taught me how to research areas. So one area I wanted to do was Northampton because my son went to university there, and the other one was Milton Keynes because they were quite close. And I researched and felt I was prepared to drive an hour. So it was about deciding where I wanted to invest. I like the growth and the rental income in Cambridge and even Northampton and Milton Keynes. If you provide a really good home and environment, it's amazing the level of rent you can actually get. And the properties are cheaper in Northampton and Milton Keynes. You get a lot more for your money.
Okay, that's great. And also a question from Iman. What investment options are there for people with 10K or less?
10K or less. Now, it would be I would say that you could actually see if there was other people you wanted to work with as well, so that you can bring that capital larger. The options would be further in the north. It depends on how far you're prepared to go. So in the north, there are properties that are cheaper. That's what I would say at the moment. There might be other ideas. I would personally myself think, okay, look at your own property. Is there a way that you can release capital in your property? Are you working? Can you add that 10K to some capital from your property and get a bigger deposit? Look at the villages, because I know Iman's in Cambridge. So look at the villages outside, just from central Cambridge. But look, absolutely every weekend, just if you're interested in property, every weekend, go and look at the new properties, look at properties that are being sold, old ones as well, but go and look at them, because you'll be surprised. You're putting the vibration out there that you want to get a property and something will come. So it's about taking action, not just thinking about it.
Yeah, and just on that, before we move on, there's two other things that I think that she could consider. So one is property crowdfunding. So we have a property crowdfunding partner called Leo Crowdfunding, and you can invest in property projects from as little as £100. And so that really opens up property to pretty much anybody, because the investment amounts are so low. So that's one thing that you can consider. And then something else that we've been discussing recently within Propel is purchase lease options. And this is where you can get control of a property without actually buying it. And we've run a course on that recently. So there are quite a few women on here today who've actually been through that course. So, you know, if you stick around for the networking later, you should bring that up and ask them how they found that. Because that's a great way to get into property, to be able to actually control the asset, benefit financially from it without actually having to buy it. So therefore you don't have to have the initial deposit, etc.
Yeah, indeed. So just conscious of time. Thank you, Aisha. So just conscious of time. So just one, I would just say one final question from me to wrap up with Naila. What piece, and you know, I think it's been wonderful hearing your story again. I love the fact that I get to hear it twice. For me, I would say, what would you say is one actionable piece of advice that you could give to someone who might feel stuck by their circumstances? Because for me, I just hear your story and I think, wow, you've done so much for property despite everything.
I think have absolute trust and faith that things work out for you, right? And take the action, because there were so many obstacles, so many problems happening that I found that could have held me back, but I just took the action. And whatever action, sometimes it don't make sense, the action you take, but meditation is absolutely, I would say, definitely one thing that if it stops all the mind chatter, all that stuff going on, because it slows you down. So when you're meditating and you're staying still, then you can have your instinct come up and gives you ideas and just go and take that action. So it becomes less about you finding the answers. It's about your mindset, investing massively in your mindset, because 80% of your success will come from how you develop your personal self, your personal development. So it's the action's only 20%. it is all investing in your personal self.
Yeah.
That's what I would definitely say.
And I absolutely echo that. As some of you will know, I've spoken about this before. I recently discovered mindfulness and meditation. In fact, we did a group meditation within Propel, and that for me was absolutely incredible. It really helped me to sort of, as you said, separate the noise, sort of focus my mind, and really be able to see more clearly sort of certain paths and things that I should take. And I was not a sort of a big fan of meditation or mindfulness before. I'll be, very upfront. I thought it was, that's something that other people do. It's not really for me. But I find it absolutely incredible. And that sort of self-care part is really important. If we're not taking care of ourselves, we can't take care of others. So you do have to focus on yourself and take care of yourself first. It's a bit like when you're on a plane and they tell you that in the case of an emergency, you have to put your own air mask on first before you help other people. And I think it's the same in life. You have to look after yourself so that you can therefore help others as well. And, when it comes to property investing, again, in order to have that sort of clarity of vision and to have that, to see where you're going and to be able to decide what to do, you need to be able to think clearly. So you need to work on yourself first.
So can I just say one other thing? The thinking doesn't happen from the head, it happens from the heart. That's very, very, there's a lot of research on that as well. So if you start thinking from the heart, you're more likely to make the right decisions. And that takes training and skill. And it's a very powerful, once you start doing it, it's really powerful because you come out of your head.
Yeah, no, definitely. And awareness, that's such an amazing thing. Thank you so much, Naila. And for those who still have questions, as I just mentioned in the chat, you will get a chance to ask them directly to her in the breakout room. So hang around for that later. So now we're going to move on to Mimi. If I know she had to mute because she might have had noise in the background, but are you back with us, Mimi?
I'm back with you, and I still have a little bit of noise in the background, unavoidable parts of being a mum.
That's fine. We're in a women's network. We all know. It's a safe place.
But really, as in Naila, that is amazing. Your personal story and the examples that you shared were just so amazing. So really humbled and really blessed by what you shared with us today. And it really, ties into what I echo with you, the sense that you have to have an understanding of your own vision and your own center. And today for me is really just about highlighting the purpose of all of this investing. What's the core of why we do what we do, and it's not necessarily percentage, but it's actually who you are. Financial planning 101. And it starts off with reflecting and meditating on what's important to you. What does financial independence actually mean to you as a person? I loved Naila's personal stories and examples around being able to take holidays with her family and enjoy life. And that will be different for different individuals. What are your own personal goals and aspirations? What does good look like to you at the end of things? And I'll typically sit with people and get them to reflect on what they want from their career, if they're professionals, or if they're self-employed, what they want from their business, or full-time moms, what they want for their families. That's the example you use of working with your father, your brother, involving your children. The power of our families and the reason why we do a lot of what we do is to provide for them, to build on those relationships, to fulfill purpose and just lifestyle. What do you actually enjoy? If you're a hands-on person, you enjoy painting, you enjoy interior decorating, you might be someone who prefers walking, somebody who prefers skydiving. It's really sitting down and reflecting on your lifestyle and what you want out of life, and meditating on it, and it will manifest. What you think about. As a man thinks, so is he. And then the final thing to think about is looking at property and how the impact of property over time, essentially, um, can play out, whether you want to own your own property, rent it, refurbish it. These are all decisions that we all make real time. And I often ask people to just pause and think, you know, where were you 5 years ago? Just pause. You know, what was your name? It may have changed. In my case, it was Miss. Now it's Mrs. I lived with my youngest sister. Now I've got two toddlers over here, my side. And I lived in a completely different part of the city of London. And from Canary Wharf, I now live not far from Greenwich. From being a corporate banker, I'm now a self-employed financial advisor. So it was a very, very different journey for me. And it's just thinking about your own personal journey, and where you see yourself in 5 years' time across all these areas. Now, we plan, we forecast, life happens, and you have to adapt. And it's looking at this plan, pulling it out, reflecting on it regularly. And so what I do with my clients is at least once a year, we sit down and we reflect and we think, first of all, why? What is your why? And, you know, are you on target for what you said your why is? And it's not this fancy number, okay, I want 8% returns. It's actually, I want to provide for my family. I want to have a good quality of life. I want good work-life balance. I want to know that, you know, I have an independent income stream from my partner. So these are things that would be important to you. And what are you doing today or not doing to get there? So once I have the big picture, then we drill down into thinking about what do the actual key components of making that a reality involve. So I'm going to share with you what I call my wheel of wealth, or my wealth pie. And it's thinking through these 6 dimensions of wealth. Some people have more and break it down even more granularly. And it's thinking through your cash flow. Is your cash flow negative or is it positive? If you have surplus income, are you putting away an emergency cash buffer? And then once you have that buffer, some people want to jump straight to investing, but actually it's thinking through, do I have protection in place? You know, if something were to happen to me today, I have 2 young children, right? I don't even want to think about what would happen if I didn't have life insurance in place. You know, as it stands now, the mortgage would be paid off, fees we provide for if the worst were to happen, because I'm the breadwinner. So making sure that I have the right protections in place. I'm planning to live a good life. I'm not planning to go anywhere, but it's good just to put the right measures in place. And then when those are in place, we begin to talk about investments and what your investment strategy is. It's a combination of equities, which are shares in companies, bonds, which is basically lending the government or companies money. And each of these instruments have a different return profile and purpose. But I blend that into what you're trying to achieve and where you are and say, okay, this is a mix that could work. And real estate is a key strategy. We're here for Propel. And that's why I sort of put property in its own complete section. And it's thinking, do I want to buy? Is it time to sell? You know, should I rent? Should I refurbish? Should I actually be thinking about gifting this to my children because I don't want an inheritance tax liability for them? And that's why, you know, you sort of swing over to that estate planning. You build up all wealth, you build up all these assets, and then, you know, you don't have a will to leave things tidily and you leave a question mark. And COVID has shown us the fragility of our existence. You know, a lot of people have lost people this year that they didn't anticipate. And so it's just thinking through, if I were to go, whether I'm 100 or whether, you know, I'm 40, is it going to be tidy, you know? And will there, you know, so, and then also a lasting power of attorney, if God forbid one were incapacitated due to a coma or a stroke and unable to communicate your wishes, who has the ability to look after your financial assets and to look after your health welfare? So making sure you have a power of attorney in place is key. And thinking about philanthropy, I love the projects. I mean, I grew up in Kenya. So when you mentioned the Kenyan school, I just felt, oh yes, woman after my own heart. So philanthropy, thinking around what you want to do to give back to your communities of influence. And posterity, it doesn't make sense to set up a trust. What kind of legacy do you want to leave? You know, and it's about being intentional, designing these things, reflecting on them, planning and praying for a good long life. I tend to refer to scripture a lot, and there's a verse I like which says, "A godly man leaves an inheritance for his children and his children's children." So it's thinking that through. And the big taboo, you know, they say there's two predictable things in life: death, taxes, and change. So three predictable things. So thinking around what the tax implications of your decisions are. So we're just going to do a quick poll now to see sort of where everyone is in this group. I'll just give you a minute or two to do that.
Can everyone see the polls on the screen? If you just click the options, and you can click multiple that apply to you. Yeah, we'll just give everyone a couple of more seconds. Oh, this is interesting. Okay, let's see. See how balanced this group is. Okay, wait for a few more of you. Yeah, okay. So I don't know if you can see the results as well, Mimi.
Yes, I can.
Yeah.
And you know, it's you know, looking at the results, it's fairly typical, but there is even a bigger gap when it comes to protection planning for women. You know, the UK populace, a lot of people don't have life insurance in place, but they'll have protection for their mobile phones. And so, and a lot of people get that sense of security from their job. But with furloughing now, where people would have had arrangements in place through employers, it's thinking through, do I have a gap in my personal protection? And if so, what do I need to do to mitigate that? And it's good to see that, you know, at least 40% of the group is investing. And I think the majority of the presentation now will focus on, you know, how can you channel your investments effectively? Beyond property, what are some of the ways you can use the cash flow that you'll generate to compound growth? And then looking at writing a will, it is something that a lot of people put off, and it's understandable. But now there's technology and companies that allow you to write your will in like 15 minutes if your affairs are simple. If not, with a financial advisor like myself, I'll work hand in hand with a solicitor to make sure that your wishes are captured and a will is put in place. You know, at each annual review, I badger my clients until they have basics of protection in place, basics of a will in place. And in some cases, it goes beyond a will to setting up a trust. And so it's having that sort of accountability partner and finding someone that you can trust, creating your dream team. And understanding your tax bracket. You know, real estate is amazing. It's also amazing when you leverage, but it is one of the most taxed asset classes. And so you need to have a really great accountant, a really great lawyer on this journey with you. So thanks so much for doing this survey, ladies. And, you know, it's just fascinating to see the outcomes. So, you know, homework from this is people will follow up on getting all these different things into place, particularly the estate planning piece. And the homework is when you're sitting down and reviewing yourself, think about your wealth pie, your protection, your investments, and your estate planning, or think about your wealth pipe, your protection, your investments, your property, and your estate planning, and make sure there's no kinks in that pipe. That would mean that the water flows to where you don't want it to go, or that the water runs out. So it's just making sure that things are positioned holistically. So now that we've sort of laid that foundation, I'm going to talk about how I typically help my clients who hold real estate portfolios, but who want to know how to invest in general. So I will close the poll down if that's okay. And talk about long-term investing. So as mentioned, I work with St. James's Place Wealth Management. It's a FTSE 100 company. And it's been around for over 27 years, helping UK residents manage their wealth holistically across the generations. So helping SMEs, helping families. And when it comes to long-term investing, one of the things I like to sort of reflect on is, are we thinking just for today, or are we planning for a 30, 40, 50-year time horizon? So I have a little assignment for you. I'm going to ask you, if you'd invested £100,000 back in 1987, right? How much do you think it would be worth today? Just, post it in the comments box. So if you'd invested £100,000 back in 1987, you invested it in property, how much do you think it would be worth today? Just post in the chat. I'm trying to give the answer away. Post in the chat. So 100,000, this is 1987 here.
So we have a couple of people saying over a million, 1 million, over 1 million, one person 2 million, 1.5 million.
Wow, I love this group, punchy. And if you'd invested in equities also around the same time, £100,000, how much do you think it would be worth today?
Millions. We've got 2 million, 1 to 2 million.
I love
3
that
million.
everybody clearly understands the power of compounding.
Yeah, everyone's like, this is how we make our millions.
Now, this is an awesome group. So looking at the chart, you start off 1987, £100,000 in property. Property is the red line. And we get to 2008, and by 2008, property would have been worth, a million. And the pale blue line here is equities. So you can see that equities is choppy, changey, super volatile over the same time horizon, but it's about 900,000. The Lehman Brothers happened, and oh my goodness, markets plummeted, right? So property down at almost 600,000 and equities approaching 500. But here we are, 12 years post 2008. And as people guessed, it is actually close to £2 million. So if you had invested in property back in 100,000 back in 1987, it would be worth £1.7 million today. Equities would be worth 1.69, and fixed income bonds, safer, less volatile asset class, would be worth about 1.1 million. Cash would have been worth about 466 because interest rates fluctuated at different rates. The last 12 years for interest rates have been rubbish, as you can see, 0.5%, but it wasn't too long ago, 2006, where interest rates are 4.6%. Oh my goodness. But, we are sort of thinking, wow, property's done really well, and it has, and so has equities. And for me, it's the sense of making sure that you have exposure to both, and exposure to bonds as well, and diversify. So long-term investing is key. Keeping a long-term perspective is key. I'll just show you a few more statistics around sort of the mindset to have around investing.
Before we leave that page, Mimi, the returns, the property returns that we saw there, are they levered or unlevered?
I knew you would ask this question.
Debt is my friend.
So the property returns are unlevered. So this particular index that was used was unlevered property, unlevered equities, unlevered everything. But it buttresses the point that with £100,000, you probably would have bought with a 25% deposit, £400,000 worth of property. So with a levered portfolio, it would be worth a lot more. You would have had interest to service along the way and taxes to pay along the way. Whereas depending on whether you used your tax efficient wrappers like your pension and your ISAs, with equities and bonds, there may not have been the same amount of tax to pay. So it's just
Sorry, we just had one question come in. Is it, are they real returns? And so is it adjusted for inflation?
Yes, it's adjusted for inflation. So those are real returns. Yeah. So it's just thinking through, managing risk, diversifying, understanding that these are real returns, but it doesn't reflect the individual's tax environment. It doesn't reflect, whether they plan to sell down and take their capital gains or whether they plan to draw income from it tax efficiently. So those are some of the things that I help my clients deal with. And, you know, having that long-term perspective, I know a lot of people see the volatility of equities and they think, oh my goodness, I'm not sure I want to do this. But you can experience turbulence in an airplane. It doesn't mean that you jump off, right? So for me, that's the key thing. It's remembering, why am I doing this? Why did I decide I want to invest for 30 years? Is it to save up for a pension? So it's really not about watching the waves, because waves will come and go, but the tide is generally rising upwards. So if you focus on the volatility, you won't move. But in saying all this, you have to know your own financial personality, whether you have the composure to deal with the volatility in equities, or whether you prefer sort of the smooth ride of property. There'll still be ups and downs, but not to the same sort of chopping and changing. So it's just knowing what you can stomach in terms of literally. I use this as a roller coaster, and some people love roller coasters. They love the excitement, they love the adrenaline rush, and some people come off the roller coaster and they puke their guts out. So, so just knowing that, do I have the risk appetite for a volatile investment? And if not, then you stay in safer haven assets like bonds. So it's having that perspective that, again, year on year, if you looked at that volatility, you'd think it was a lot. But if you look at the absolute returns year on year, so like 2008, the most significant dip in the last 20 years, we were down negative 40%. But the following year, 2009, we're up 30%. But even within that same year, there was a drop of almost 21%. So equities are volatile, but if you hang on, if you stay in, you could reap the rewards, right? This shows you the volatility one day, the dark blue line. The red line shows over 10 years. So it's just framing your time horizon and remembering, why am I doing this? Is this because I'm putting money away towards my pension? Or is it a shorter time horizon? And, you know, just bearing that into consideration. This shows you the volatility, the dark blue line day on day. The red line shows you the return over time as well. So this is the drop that we've experienced due to COVID, this dark red line here. And when you look at that on a long-term perspective, already we have regained some of the correction that was experienced due to COVID-19. It's still an ongoing phenomenon, but again, it's remembering, what's your time horizon? Is it a few days, or are you investing for 30 plus years, right? And typically, the way I help my clients with their investments would be the cash flows from rental income, contributing that towards a pension, for example. Because with the pension, if you have, you can get a certain amount of tax relief. So every UK resident can put £2,880 away towards a pension, and the government will add at least 20% tax relief to bring it up to 3,600. And you can do that even for my little baby girl here. From the day she's born, I could have put 2,880 into her pension, and the government would have said, great, Mimi, here's another 20%, and it would be 2,600. I don't know many other things that can give you that type of return, but I've paid my fair share of taxes, so I'm happy to do that for my daughter. Now, the downside with that is that she doesn't get to access it until she's 55, but now it even buttresses more the power of compounding, because 2,880 put away for her for the next 18 years while she's a minor and held until she's 55, she'll be a millionaire by the time she retires. Hopefully before, because of some of the other strategies I'm pursuing. But 2,880 from my rental income a year is something that I can afford to feed in on a regular basis. So especially for clients who are in their 50s, 60s, thinking, how can I create wealth generationally? How can I gift things regularly without creating an inheritance tax liability? It can be quite a smart strategy to do that, and sets your children and grandchildren up for the long term. And this shows what happens if you bought and sold and missed some of the best days in the market. So if you stayed fully invested over a 20-year time frame, you know, if you had 100,000 over a 20-year time frame, it would be worth at least 256,000 if you stayed invested for the course of 20 years at least. If you missed the best 10 days, it would halve. And so this buttresses the point of not trading in, trading out, trading in, trading out, but having a systematic strategy. If you missed the best 20 days, again, and if you missed the best 40 days, you know, so it's just important to bear that into consideration, that it's time in, not timing. So I always say little bit, often, consistent actions over a long time frame build up into an amazing amount of wealth. I love Nyla's journey because it was an overnight success. She consistently changed and switched, assessed different properties, assessed different neighborhoods, and she's still growing. And this part just shows the importance of diversification when you're assessing your investments. Are you just going to invest in UK equities? No, you want to invest in emerging markets equities. You want to invest in commodities. You want to invest in a little bit of everything, because over time, different assets will outperform each other. So when you're diversified, you get broad exposure to various asset classes. Now, I could spend time talking about how St. James's Place invests for clients, but that's something that I always take offline with people one-on-one. And I'm happy to have complimentary meetings with anyone who's interested in learning more about how to invest paper assets with a regulated financial advisor, and how to maximize rental income and surplus cash flows. But one of the things I wanted to buttress is the emotional journey, the emotional aspects of investing. And Naila said it right, it's about the heart and head coming together. And with investments, I find oftentimes it's when the markets are toppy that people want to buy in. And it's oftentimes when markets are dropping that people want to sell, which doesn't work, because would you buy a property high and sell it? No, no. You look for the bargains. When everyone is saying sell is when you look for the bargains, and make sure that you maintain your composure, because the emotions around investing are real, whether it's property or equities or bonds. And it all stems from a foundation of knowing who you are, what you're about, and what you want to see long term for yourself, your family, and the causes that you're passionate about. So I think I've talked quite a bit now, and just happy to take any questions or comments or yeah.
Great. Thank you, Mimi. That was brilliant. Yes. So no, so we already have some people just trying to clarify, is it timing or time in? No, it's time in, as you say. So it's about being invested, and understanding what your horizons are. And I think that's just really good advice, and I think it actually speaks to how I'm sure a lot of you ladies also think. So we have some questions, and just so people are aware, I've also dropped Mimi's Calendly link in the chat. So if you wanted to book some time with her, you can definitely do so. If that works for you, Mimi.
She's muted.
Oh, she muted.
I did a thumbs up.
Yeah. She gave you the thumbs up, exactly.
Cool. All right, brilliant. So we have some questions for you. So let's see. So from Gloria, what investment platforms do you recommend?
Excellent. So as a St. James's Place advisor, I'm only authorized to recommend St. James's Place as a platform because we've done our due diligence on all our funds and fund managers. So that's the only one I can recommend from an official advice perspective. What I also often tell people is there's certain websites that are generic guidance websites, so like Money Advice, Money Supermarket, that actually have lists comparing different brokers and the pros and cons of different brokers. What I can tell you is first of all, assessing whether you want to have an active approach. So whether you want to pick and choose stocks yourself, or whether you would prefer to have a fund manager. What I can also tell you is thinking about the cost and the charges. So actually, I'll share a quick page, and these are some of the things that we sort of consider when we're determining which fund managers to use and how to invest. And it's really key that there are a lot of considerations, and it's understanding that and knowing for yourself, okay, I actually want to be more active in the decision making, right? So people who do that, I've heard people often use platforms like Hargreaves Lansdowne, but it's doing your due diligence and understanding the cost. Others who say, I don't really know my investment personality and I just want to fill out a form and have a recommendation as to this is the portfolio I should go for. then I've seen people like that go for Wealthify or Money Farm or things where it's a funded portfolio that's automatically selected for you. But without knowing who you are, knowing your financial personality, knowing your personal circumstances, I can't make a specific recommendation. It's literally like saying, where should I shop, for my dresses. It depends on your dress, like your fashion sense. It depends on whether you're shopping for corporate reasons or for celebration. So then I'll say, okay, check out Monsoon or check out Zara or check out Hobbs. It depends on what you're going for. So there's so many different platforms out there. The only one that I can recommend hand on heart is St. James's Place, because you have the benefit of a financial advisor on that journey. And that's the only one I'm authorized to recommend. So it is a restricted platform. So I'm not a whole of market IFA that can, pick and choose different platforms for different clients. I just say, we have a really consistent investment management approach. And I can maybe take 2 minutes to share on that once all the other questions are addressed. I can pull up.
I can just add a few comments to that as well. So yeah, although Mimi can't recommend any others, she did kindly drop in other names there. And some of them I was going to say anyway. So Hargreaves Lansdown is one firm that you could look at. There's also Wealthify, Money Farm, Nutmeg. There are quite a lot of them out there. I'd say the most important thing to look to find is the one that works for you. So as Mimi said, do you want to be active in terms of how you're selecting which investments to do, or do you want to work with a manager who's going to do it for you? Typically, when it comes to things like equities, Mimi may not agree with me with some of the things I'm about to say, but my personal opinion, so this isn't advice, this is my personal opinion. If I were to invest in equities, I would look for tracker funds or ETFs, because they are the most cost effective versus going for something like an equity fund. Because what I found is that over time, trackers tend to perform very similarly to funds, but you don't have the sort of excess charges and the fees that you'll get if somebody is actively managing the portfolio. So I would look for a platform that has ETFs, exchange traded funds, or tracker funds in order to invest in equities, but that's just my personal choice. But again, if you go online and you have a look at, some of the names that we've mentioned here, you can start to get a feel for what will work for you.
Yeah, and I think that's it's a very personal choice. I'd say that the value of advice is key, and I would say even just sitting down with a financial advisor to review your affairs holistically is important. And I'll just share a little bit about our investment management approach, maybe just 2 minutes, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Excellent. So what we do is we pick fund managers from across the globe. So we have about 39 funds. And we have fund managers from South Africa, from Australia, from the US. And some of the fund managers that we have, you can only access through St. James's Place. We give these fund managers a mandate. We say, you be responsible, like Nippon Value Investors here, be responsible for Japanese equities and picking Japanese equities. Before we selected Nippon Value Investor as a fund manager, we screened 200 managers who manage specifically Japanese shares. We narrowed it down to 40 managers, and then 20 who went through full due diligence before we selected this fund manager. So a lot of people ask, how do you pick fund managers? How do you know that? Well, we select globally and we monitor them regularly. And if we need to change them, we change them appropriately. We monitor our fund managers on an ongoing basis. So we have over 627 fund manager meetings just in 2019. We have an investment committee that has 300 years of experience, 250 plus years of experience between them, and they meet 22 times a year to sort of review our fund managers, review that we're performing to the mandate we should. We have 63 full-time investment professionals working exclusively on behalf of St. James's Place clients to face off to these fund managers. And 19 funds are only available through St. James's Place. So even if you went to Hargreaves Lansdown to buy the fund, you wouldn't be able to access it. Or if you went to any other platform to try and buy the fund, you can only access it through St. James's Place. So aside from that, we provide a lot of complementary services to our clients around estate planning, asset preservation, introducing to solicitors, to accountants within our network, which we feel adds the advice element, because we can't say we're charging you for advice and we're not providing value. So there are several things that we do behind the scenes to ensure that our clients are served. And it's not just about investment performance. We also look at the ESG objectives of the fund managers that we work with. So what are the environmental standards? What are their social standards? What are their governance? Are they just investing in a way that is completely debilitating to the environment? No. So it's part of our mandate that we invest in alignment with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And you can talk about, I'll take the bus instead of driving to reduce my carbon footprint, but how you invest your pension would make more impact over a lifetime than choosing to cycle, So for me, it's about much more than just picking single line equities. It's about having a holistic framework, knowing that your strategy is consistent for the medium to long term, and it's not on a whim. So that's how we approach investments, which is why I can't recommend any other platform, but I can only talk to how we do things within St. James's Place. So on that note, I talked for more than 2 minutes. So
Great, thanks, Mimi. I'll hand over to you now, Aisha, if you wanted to wrap up.
Yeah, so just to say a couple of sort of closing thoughts before we go into the breakout rooms. So I guess, we are a property investing community, and property is fundamentally the asset class that we look at. But I do think it's important to consider other asset classes as well. But again, it's really going to come down to your personal preferences and I guess where you are in your life. So just to give you an example, Mimi is forever on at me to diversify and to consider investing in other things, also to get a will, all these various things. She's on at me regularly, but it really is important. And some of the things I think you don't necessarily think about. The statement that really got me is that people are willing to get insurance and protection for their phone, but not for their life. In terms of sort of which asset classes you should invest in and what's right for you, as I said, very personal choice. But something that I always used to talk about with my clients when I was in wealth management was it really depends on where in your life you are. If you have capital and you're trying to preserve it, the decisions you make and the investments decisions that you choose are going to be very different to if you're in the sort of what I call growth phase of your life. And for me personally, I am very much still in the growth phase where I'm trying to use what capital I have to make more capital. So I do make investment decisions which would, on the face of it, seem quite concentrated and less diverse. And by that, I mean majority of the assets that I have are in property. But within my property strategy, I diversify. So some of my assets will be generating income. Some of my assets will be focused more on capital appreciation. I also diversify by geography. I invest in London, I invest in Birmingham, I started investing in Bristol, I'll look at other places. Historically, everything that I had done, I was purely focused on residential investment. I've recently started looking at commercial. I will also diversify in terms of, so as I said, it's income and capital appreciation, diversify in terms of geography, diversify in terms of property strategy. And then you can also diversify by JVing with other people and pooling your money. So for example, if there was a property investment, I could put all of my money into that, but then if something goes wrong, then that's all of my money that's impacted. Whereas if I only put half my money in that and half my money in something else and somebody else puts their money in, it's allowing me to diversify my risk. So there are many different ways that you can still get diversification, even though you're focused on one strategy. At some point, I will start to look at other asset classes, such as equities, etc., because then my goals would have changed. So it kind of goes back to what Mimi said at the very beginning when she put up those questions about thinking about what is your why, what are your goals. It also matters where are you along that journey, because your investment habits and your investment strategy will change, as your goals change, but also just as life changes and you get older as well. Something else which typically tends to change as we age is our risk tolerance. The younger you are, the more able you are to tolerate more risk, generally speaking. Personally, it might feel very different. But what they say is that if you're younger and, for example, you invest and then there is a financial crisis, you generally speaking will have those years ahead to recover. Whereas if you're older and you invest and you lose a lot of your capital, then you just have less years left to try and recover. So the older you get, your risk tolerance changes and you tend to look for more stable assets. So maybe that's a point in your life where you will start to consider, well, maybe I need to invest a bit more in bonds, or I need to adjust how I'm investing. So very, very personal decisions. But I say the key thing is investing over the long term is really what pays. And then that just goes back to the whole theme of this Honest Stories. It's about compound interest. It's about investing over time, having your returns, earning returns on returns. And then I'll leave you with one final thought, and that's just tax. Something again that Mimi mentioned. It is painful if you work really hard, you invest in property, if you're Naila, you're giving your tenants pizza and doing all these things and giving up your time, to then have to give more than you need to the taxman. It is so crucial to make sure that your investments are set up in a tax efficient way so that you don't have to pay more tax than you need to. I do believe that we all have a duty to pay some element of tax, but don't pay more away than you need to. So it's really important that you get the tax situation set up, and it's important to do it from the beginning, because often what happens is once you have a structure set up, if you try to change it later, there are often penalties. So before you get into a property investment, always speak to an accountant, ideally one who is trained in property, to really understand what are your options and what are the different choices that you can make, because it really makes a difference. Even if you're only paying a little bit extra over time, with compounding again, it really matters. And that money could have gone in your pocket. So I'll leave it there.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Aisha. So just a quick question from Zoe. She just asked, sorry, Aisha, what do you mean by commercial investments? I'm guessing you mean commercial property investments on that front.
Yes. So by commercial property investments, I mean, I think for me personally, I'm talking specifically about retail units, so shops, but commercial could also include things such as hotels or offices. So it's basically the buildings that we don't live in. So the ones we live in are residential property, and everything else is actually, there are various different use classes, but by commercial, typically you mean things like offices, shops, etc. Personally, I am looking at retail units. I'm not an expert in it at all. It's something that I've just started. I was actually having a lot of conversations with Julia Hart, who's on this chat as well. She's looking at commercial, and I was sort of talking to her, and just also given what's going on in the market, I'm driving along high streets and I'm seeing a lot of retail shops that have closed. For me, what's really interesting is, do they have residential units on top, or can you repurpose sort of the ground floor and maybe get a residential unit on the back? So when I say commercial, it's not pure commercial, it's commercial with resi. And I think it's just opportunistic for me to look at it now, given that unfortunately, there are going to be so many, or unfortunately for some people, there are going to be lots of shops that just aren't going to be able to reopen because of what's been happening with lockdown and with Corona, which means you should be able to get quite good opportunities. But what we're going to be doing in August, I believe, is Julia is actually going to be talking us through what she does with retail units and the commercial strategy, and she's going to be doing that with a gentleman who is actually an expert in commercial property. I would actually say there are two, I'd say, commercial experts that I know of in the UK, and he is one of them. So we're going to be hosting that webinar in August, so if you are interested, look out for that.
Great. So I would just like to ask if everyone could just quickly unmute and give our speakers a round of applause, because I think it's been just such a lovely and insightful session. So thank you both so much. Great. So we are going to be going into breakout rooms imminently. I just have one thing to share with you all before we do that. For us at Propel, it's really important that we think about, what we're trying to do in terms of helping you. And for us, we really think there is a lot of power in not only having a community that you can engage with and feel supported by, but also making sure that you have the education. So I found a purple door, believe it or not, guys, on a stock site. So I was like, I have to use it. And there are these boxes that look like bricks, which is perfect for what we do. So, for us, it's about opening doors through education. And we have two brilliant courses coming up. So we have one I have one that's being run by Bronwyn on fundraising. So actually, someone's question earlier about what can I do if I have 10K or less? Actually, this is perfect in terms of thinking about, it's not just about using your own money. It's about actually, if you find the right opportunities, who you can work with and where you can find that funding. And actually, you might be on the other side. You might actually have money, you might have cash that's being generated, and you might want to put it to use and help other people out. And so actually, this is a really good thing to think about. And that course will be coming soon on Saturday, 8th of August. And then we have a rerun of Jilly's course. So she'll be doing a second date, which has been confirmed for Saturday, the 19th of September. We know that some people had missed out and we're really gutted for not being able to attend. So we have a second date now. So, you can book your places on a Saturday too. So hopefully this shouldn't clash with any work commitments, as we know many of you are now going back into work. Pricing, I've listed under there, but feel free to ask me for more details when we are in the breakout rooms.
And just one thing on that, Emma. So there were, quite a few women who actually went on Jilly's course and who have done this purchase lease options course. I strongly recommend anybody thinking about it that you speak to some of the people who have already done the course and to read and to hear firsthand, what it was like. So if you are sitting on the fence and you're not sure if it's for you, speak to people who've done it, find out what it's like, and then you'll be able to make a decision. And as I mentioned earlier, the purchase lease options course is great if you don't have a lot of money to get started, or even if you do have some capital, it's a way for you to just increase the numbers of properties that you can actually purchase. And it's a strategy that I'm actually looking at for myself now as well. And the other comment I wanted to make, I will also be joining Bronwyn on her course, and I will be talking about how you work with, or how you find, first of all, high net worth investors to raise funds from, and then how you raise the funds from them, and then how you manage that relationship and work with them, because that was my sort of area of expertise. So anybody who wants to join that course, you will be seeing a little cameo from me as well.
Brilliant. And then finally, thank you for everyone that has been, sharing with us on social. Do connect with us, and you can always drop us a message on any of our platforms anytime.